All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great weekend so far. Got a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to be hitting on 5 games. I didn't get to watch any basketball last night because I was watching the Arizona Diamondbacks in the World Series lose in absolutely heartbreaking fashion thanks to a Corey Seager 2-run bomb off of our closer, who has never given up a run so far in the postseason this year until that specific hit. So that was depressing. But I woke up this morning and I watched about 6 consecutive hours of basketball from a jam-packed night of hoops. And we're going to hit on 5 games. Golden State Warriors have an impressive double-digit win against the Sacramento Kings. The Spurs and the Rockets, a game that we would never have covered last year on the show, produced an incredibly entertaining game. Victor Wembanyama sends the game to OT with a late bucket. The Spurs end up closing the deal in OT. Miami Heat and Boston Celtics always play tough games. The Heat, throughout most of the game, kind of made Boston feel uncomfortable and kept a little bit of a lead, but Boston's talent takes over in the fourth quarter as they come out with a win. The Oklahoma City Thunder came back from down 10 with a couple of minutes left against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They hit 4 consecutive threes. We're going to hit that game from both teams. And then Luka Doncic hits 4 consecutive threes to steal a game from the Brooklyn Nets as they have gone 0-2. Blowing 2 late leads. So we're going to hit all 5 of those games from the perspectives of all 10 teams. Then I have 3 mailbag questions for the end of the show as well. You guys know the drill before we get started. This is our new YouTube channel. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Help us get this channel off the ground. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, under Hoops Tonight. Follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. That's where I'm doing video content and show announcements. This morning, I posted a bunch of videos from my film session on Twitter. So I'm going to reference a bunch of plays that you'll be able to see on my Twitter feed. And then last but not least, I need more mailbag questions. Keep dropping those in the YouTube comments so we can hit them later on during the season. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub. And with DraftKings parlays, everyone's got a shot at an even bigger basketball win. String together multiple bets from the same game or build your parlay across multiple games for a shot at making your payday even sweeter. Basketball's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. So, Golden State Sacramento. A classic kind of game where at the beginning, it's the star that's kind of carrying things while the team figures things out. The Kings kind of have a little bit of a lead. They're holding the Warriors at bay, but Steph's going crazy. He goes crazy in the first half, goes crazy again to start the third quarter, goes on a crazy run to put the Warriors up 11 in the middle of the third quarter, hits a step back 3, hits a mid-range pull-up in a pick and roll, hits a driving layup against a double team against Harrison Barnes where he beats him to the baseline and lays it up and just starts talking shit. Then caps it off with a movement 3 at the top of the key where he gets fouled. Gets a 4-point play, puts the Warriors up 11. But what I thought was interesting, because Steph was amazing. Finished with 41 points. He's amazing. I can sit here and talk about how amazing Steph is all night long. But what I found to be super interesting in this game was the run that the bench went on in the late third quarter. They went with an interesting kind of front court combination of Trayce Jackson-Davis with Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga alongside Klay Thompson and Chris Paul. And they were really good defensively during that third quarter run. Those three, Trayce Jackson-Davis, Moses Moody, and Jonathan Kuminga were on the floor for 4 minutes, and they were +7 and logged a defensive rating of 63.6, which is outstanding. And what stood out to me mostly was the overall amount of athleticism on the floor with that group. Trayce Jackson-Davis is basically like a really big wing if you factor in his mobility. Obviously, he functions offensively as a big man, but like he's got the mobility and lateral quickness that you see in a lot of wings, and he's got the versatility to kind of function as a wing when it comes to covering ground in rotation, which is something that the Warriors have never really had from the center position outside of Draymond in this era. It's almost always been bigger, slower players that are occupying those minutes, right? And there was a specific play that I thought demonstrated this really well that you guys can see on my Twitter feed if you go back where I talk about this particular trio. But Trayce Jackson-Davis gets a block in drop coverage at the rim on the left side of the rim. As a result, which by the way, already impressive defensive play. But in the scrum, the ball ends up flying to the top of the key and to a wide open shooter, and I think it was De'Aaron Fox if I remember correctly. And both Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga close out to the top of the key. When they both close out to the top of the key, the ball gets swung to the corner. When the swing goes to the corner, Trayce Jackson-Davis rotates from under the basket where he was in drop coverage to chase, I think it was Keegan Murray out of the right corner, chase him off the line. Moses Moody realizes that him and Kuminga are on the same guy. He sprints back and guards JaVale McGee. Keegan Murray drives towards the left, towards the middle, and throws a kick-out pass back to the top of the key. Jonathan Kuminga, who's a freak athlete, digs down to contain that drive from the left side, right? And then recovers out to the top of the key to contest a three-point shot and force a miss. So again, you get the high-level rim protection from Trayce Jackson-Davis on that play, but in the chaos, you leave two open shooters. But because you've got athletes on the floor, they're flying out to those shooters and they're chasing them off the line and forcing them into tougher shots. And that kind of like athleticism out of the front court, again, like athleticism on the perimeter has its own value, but especially when you have bigger athletes, they can help you a lot when it comes to contesting shots and flying around in rotation. And that's kind of an aspect that we haven't been used to seeing from Golden State in their bench groups. And I thought that was a really exciting kind of stretch of basketball to demonstrate what they could be getting out of the bench over the course of this season. Again, +7 in 4 minutes for that trio, 63.6 defensive rating. Hard not to get excited about that. Another solid Jonathan Kuminga game. He was +9 in 26 minutes. Had a nasty tip dunk, made some defensive plays. He had a play where he beat Davion Mitchell in a post-up. That's that matchup attacking stuff that I like to see. Hit a very important corner three before the half that kind of changed the tone of the game. Jonathan Kuminga's a lot better than I thought he was going to be this season so far. And again, especially through 82 games of reps, it's very possible that he could be that playoff forward that Golden State's been looking for. I really liked Chris Paul with that group too. And this is that concept where like having an adult to run the show in a lineup that has young players works. Because again, when you threw Jordan Poole in with those groups, it's almost one of those things where like the total aggregate, call it basketball IQ, call it like ability to slow down and execute, that whatever you want to refer to that trait is with those groups kind of dipped below a level where it became freakishly inconsistent. And you would have stretches where Poole's making shots, Kuminga's making plays, and they would look great. But then you'd have stretches where it would just absolutely crater when all of them are making bad decisions. And what's nice about having Chris Paul out there is he's kind of the adult to run the show with the kids. And again, like, I know they're not kids, they're grown-ass men, but I mean, within the concept of basketball, to have that super experienced, methodical player out there to kind of get all those guys in the right spots goes a long way to helping those lineups be consistent. And again, when you juxtapose that with the Jordan Poole experience, that's what you're hoping for. You're not trying to win games with the bench. You're trying to keep your starters in where they are at in the game, try to maintain that progress so that when they come back in the game, they can build upon it though. And like there were times when the Warriors won games with their bench, and that's great, but the consistent experience is actually better here. Chris Paul's really good at just finding the easy shots that exist on the basketball court. So like there was a sequence in the early fourth quarter where he ran pick and roll with Dario Saric. And on the first one, he just like gets downhill into Sabonis' chest, like caves his chest in with a hard power dribble and makes a layup while the defender's coming from behind in back pressure. And it was kind of interesting because you could tell like Chris Paul really hit the Jets on that play. And it felt like he was almost trying to send a message like, I am willing to score here if you guys just let me go downhill unimpeded, right? And then on the very next possession, they run another pick and roll. But in this case, Chris, more methodically, is trying to set up Dario Saric for a shot. So when he comes down over the top of the screen, they both converge on Chris because he had just scored by dropping his shoulder and getting downhill. Nice, easy bounce pass to Dario Saric in the short corner for a little 17-foot jump shot that he's going to make probably 2 out of 3 times when he's that wide open. That's just easy basketball. And again, like we talk about this all the time, but like offensive ratings, if you look at them for the league, you know, the best teams in the league are around 120 and the worst teams in the league are around 110. It's really not that much of a difference. It's less than a 10% difference between the best teams in the league and the worst teams in the league, right? And so what's actually happening there is like it's the little things on the margins that are the difference. There are easy shots that exist in games. The teams that find those easy opportunities more frequently have higher offensive ratings. There are difficult shots that take place in the game. These are rescue possessions, late game situations. The teams that are good at converting those usually have higher offensive ratings, right? Chris Paul is not the guy that's going to make a ton of really, really tough shots and lift you up in terms of the super high level shot making. But that's not what you need. That's what you have Steph Curry for. What you need is the guy that can execute and find the easy shots that are available to be had in basketball games. Like, you're not going to be able to run a Dario Saric pick and roll with Chris Paul at the end of a game and get a wide open 17-footer. They're probably going to switch the action and force Chris to make some tough shot. But in at beginning of the fourth quarter, when the game is more fast and loose, like those are there to be had. And Chris is the guy that's going to make sure you get those. And you're seeing that manifest in the scoreboard. So far through 2 games, when Steph is on the floor, the Warriors are plus 2.3 net, so outscoring their opponents by 2.3 points per 100 possessions in 142 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. Now, that number's lower because they lost the Suns game, right? But like, you expect to be positive over the course of the season, probably around 7 or 8 points per 100 possessions when Steph's on the floor. That's great, right? That's what you can depend on, thanks to Steph being one of the top 5 players in the world, right? But when Chris Paul is on the floor so far this year and Steph is off, the Warriors are plus 3.1 net in 62 possessions, so outscoring opponents by 3.1 points per 100 possessions. And again, that's a small sample size, but so far, you are winning the minutes when Steph is on the floor, off the floor. That's important. Again, like, when you want to have your best chance to beat the best teams in the league, you can't hemorrhage points with the bench group. Chris is giving you a better job of surviving those particular minutes. And again, like, it's not just without Steph on the floor there either, because like, I would argue Draymond Green is either the second or third best player on the Warriors, probably the second best player with how poorly Andrew Wiggins has been playing to start the year, right? And really for the most of last year as well. So like you're really without your second or your best player and your second best player in this case, right? And so what's interesting about that is, like, the Warriors love to tie Draymond Green to Steph Curry, and the main reason why that's a good idea is because Steph in pick and roll actions brings the offensive firepower to the action. It actually makes more sense to run Chris with more offensively skilled big men, because he's not going to be as active as a scorer in pick and roll. This is a concept we've talked about over the course of preseason. But one of the problems is over the last couple of years, often Steve Kerr has had to play Draymond Green with some of the groups without Steph because they've struggled so much. That was a big part of the story last year, if you guys remember. And it's because they're just grasping at straws. Like, how do we win these minutes? We're losing these minutes. We got to get Draymond in with those guys, so maybe we can get stops, and maybe that'll carry us over the top. But if you can actually go the way they want to go, which is keep Draymond tied to Steph, so that you have that offensive potential of those two and Draymond's defensive ceiling, right? But then also be able to float your minutes when Chris is out there with Dario Saric and Jonathan Kuminga or whoever it is, Trace Jackson Davis as well. If they can float those minutes without Draymond and without Steph, that's where you get that classic Golden State mixture that they're shooting for. So far through 2 games, the Warriors have a 108 defensive rating. That's pretty solid, especially when you consider they're against the Kings and the Suns in those 2 games. That's not an easy task. 95 defensive rating in the half court. That's solid as well. Solid as well. Biggest areas of opportunity. They got out-rebounded in both games, although I did think the guards competed better against Sacramento. The guards are who got killed in the Suns game, but I thought they competed better against Sacramento. And they need to find a way to get Andrew Wiggins going. There's something going on with him. He's just in a little bit of a funk. I don't know if he's just not in shape. I don't know if he's just struggling to fit in with with all of the other young guys being more aggressive. But when they were at their best, Andrew Wiggins was their second best player when they won the title in 2022. So that's something that I'd like to see them figure out. On the Kings front, De'Aaron Fox at 39. He's locked in so far this year. He's 7 for 15 on pull-up jump shots, and 4 of them are pull-up threes. So he's got a 60% effective field goal percentage on pull-ups. That's incredible. That was basically what Steph led the league with last year. So good start there on that front. 3 for 4 in floaters as well. The one weird thing with De'Aaron Fox is he's still missing at the rim. And if you remember, this was the story last year. Last year, De'Aaron Fox was like incredible at the rim. If I remember correctly, he shot over 70% at the rim. But then in the Warriors series, he really struggled to finish at the rim. And so far this year, he's only 8 for 16. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's a decision-making thing, a spacing thing, but De'Aaron Fox is missing too many layups. And they're getting nothing out of Kevin Huerter right now. He was 0 for 5 on threes last night. He's 1 for 12 on jump shots so far this season. He's only attempted 2 shots at the rim. Main thing that I'm seeing on tape there is he's just taking extremely difficult shots. Like, he basically comes off these dribble handoffs and either gets rid of the ball or shoots. And when he's looking for shot attempts, he's giving that 1-2 footwork, right? Like if he's coming to his right, he's planting that left foot, planting that right foot, and he's twisting in midair to square up and get that shot off. And it's just a really, really difficult shot. And so one of the things I'd like to see from Kevin Huerter, and he can actually take this as a page from Klay Thompson's playbook, but use relocation dribbles. Be more willing to use that crazy lock and trail defender's momentum against him to find higher quality shots, because that's again, when you're out of rhythm, if you try to shoot yourself out of rhythm by taking more tough shots, you're just going to get more and more discouraged. But if you actually try to get out of your shooting slump by hunting down easier shots to build your confidence, that can go a long way to getting him out of it. So I just would like to see him put the ball on the floor a little bit more to try to generate higher quality shots. Malik Monk is also struggling to start the year. And that's hurting them with Fox off the floor. So far, they are -5 net in 51 possessions without De'Aaron Fox. So they're getting outscored by 5 points per 100 possessions. As a team, still not playing any defense, 113 defensive rating, and teams are shooting 78% against the Kings in the restricted area so far through 2 games. That is the second worst mark in the entire NBA.
For a limited time, Verizon customers can get Netflix and NFL Plus for just $25 a month with Plus Play. That's $120 of annual savings. Plus Play is a platform where Verizon customers can shop, manage, and save on subscriptions you already love, like Netflix and NFL Plus. With NFL Plus Premium, you get access to live games on mobile, NFL Red Zone, NFL Network, and more. Just go to Verizon.com/Plus Play to bundle and save on Netflix and NFL Plus today for a limited time only.
All right, moving on to Houston, San Antonio. This game was an absurd amount of fun. The Rockets were up by 10 in the late third quarter. Doug, man, I'm having a hard time speaking today. Doug McDermott goes on a run to end the third quarter and start the fourth quarter. Hits 3 threes, I think, in total between the end of the third and the middle of the fourth. Gets it back close, and then down the stretch was a fun chess match. Van Vliet had a nice stretch attacking the rim and finishing in traffic. Devin Vassell hit a couple of big shots. He had this like spinning turnaround jump shot against Dylan Brooks, and then like wagged the finger at him and started talking shit. Again, Devin Vassell, I talked about him after the first game, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of young Devin Booker in his approach as a scorer, but he's actually a little bit taller and has longer arms, and so he's actually got the potential to be even more difficult to guard with his release point. But he made a lot of big plays down the stretch of this game. Had a big alley-oop in OT as well. But then it basically settled into the Rockets running cleared side post-ups for Alperen Sengun. So the Zach Collins had 5 fouls, and so Ime Udoka really wanted them to run through Alperen Sengun on the left block. So they basically just kind of set up in like a 4-out spacing. So they had like a guy in the right corner, guy on the right wing, and then 2 guys basically at the lane lines extended to the top of the key. And then they just cleared the entire left side and let Sengun basically just kind of back his way in and look for hook shots over Zach Collins. And knowing that he's not going to be able to play super physical defense to push Sengun off of his spots, because if he does, he's going to foul out. And it worked really well. They were getting hooks. They were drawing doubles and kicking out and playing drive and kick basketball from there. It was working for the Rockets. That was their late game offense. Down the stretch for the Spurs, it was pretty ugly. Again, their perimeter players right now are still a little inconsistent, but they started to have success when they started feeding Victor Wembanyama on the right block and post-ups against Jabari Smith. He had one in the kind of middle third quarter where he spun baseline and dunked it on the right side of the basket. I put that one on Twitter. You guys can see that there. And then in the final minute, when the Spurs were down by 2, I think it was right around 30 seconds left, same thing, posts up Jabari Smith on the right block and kind of makes that same sort of hard baseline move. This time Jabari cuts him off, but he just bumps him off with that shoulder and hits a little right-handed hook shot, a shot that's like literally impossible to guard. And that ended up sending the game to overtime. Now, in overtime, the Spurs kind of solved the Sengun post-up. Zach Collins said, screw it, just started being more physical and forced him into some misses. And then the one of the things that the Rockets were doing that I disagreed with is they basically had those 4 guys that were spacing just stand in those 4 spots. And there was no kind of motion or interchanging taking place. And so the Spurs defenders that were kind of gapping those guys, they were able to split the difference, and they had seen that same action so many times, they figured out how to guard it. They forced a couple of turnovers on Şengün. He forced an offensive foul, then they got a steal on a kick-out pass, and they were running it down the other end for layups and dunks. Keldon Johnson had a big two-handed dunk down the stretch. So the Spurs go up big. The Rockets then default back to that Van Vliet Şengün pick and roll, and they score 7 quick points on it. 2 pocket passes to Şengün, one where he just threw down this ridiculous dunk over Zach Collins. Like I said, super, super fun game because Şengün dunks on Zach Collins and talks all sorts of shit. Then they go down to the other end and they run Zach Collins in the post against Şengün, and he hits this like hard dribble to the right, spin back baseline, and gets past him for an and one. At that point, though, really, by the time the Keldon Johnson had that dunk, they were up big in OT, and it was basically over at that point. But the Rockets did make some shots late to make it kind of interesting. Victor Wembanyama finished with 21 points and 12 rebounds, 2 steals and 3 blocks. Made a ton of huge defensive plays. There was this, so I told you guys about the play where Devin Vassell hits the turnaround jump shot over Dillon Brooks and starts talking shit. Well, on the very next possession, he ends up attacking him again, and Dillon Brooks, of course, takes it personally because this young kid's talking shit to him. So he's locking him up, sliding with him. Vassell ends up taking like a tough, like 17-foot fadeaway on the baseline and airballs it because Dillon Brooks is especially good at disrupting your base. I've talked about this before, but like when you're giving up size to a guy who could shoot over the top, push him on their base to disrupt their lift, and then attack the shooting pocket to disrupt their gather, and that's going to operate. That's going to be much more effective to disrupt them than trying to actually contest the shot when the guy's taller than you, right? So he forces the turnover, or not the turnover, the air ball, and the Rockets run out the other way. Jabari Smith rises up and tries to dunk on Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama meets him on the top and blocks it. In the process, he gets hit. Victor kind of falls back towards the baseline. Jabari Smith gets his own offensive rebound, thinks there's nobody around him, tries to lay it back up. Victor somehow recovers from the baseline to get back into the play and blocks Jabari Smith again. Some of the most ridiculous defensive plays that we've ever seen are happening on a nightly basis with this Victor Wembanyama kid. It's ridiculous. He was also their most reliable offensive option down the stretch. Talked about those 2 right block post-ups. They had another play where they drew up an ISO for him against Dillon Brooks on a baseline out of bounds, and he ended up faking a back cut and then popping back out to the perimeter, knocking down a jump shot. Thought it was interesting, too, because after the game-tying shot against Jabari Smith Jr., you could see Dillon Brooks get a little frustrated. And in my head, I'm like, I bet you Dillon Brooks asks for the matchup in OT. And he got it. He got the matchup against Victor, and then Victor scored on him just by making a back cut move and then shooting over the top of him. But again, like for him at this point in his career to be that confident in a late game situation, down by 2 to go get a bucket, to be as confident as he was in OT, this kid is just this kid is going to be insanely good. 18 points and 9 rebounds a game so far. He's got 11 post-ups and 11 ISOs so far this season for 11 points. So he's a point per possession in static half-court shot creation. 4.5 stocks per game, which is absolutely insane. And the Spurs have a +7 net rating, meaning they're outscoring teams by 7 points per 100 possessions with him on the floor. Man, talk about a franchise-altering talent. Also was confident at the free throw line down the stretch. He's way more advanced than I expected to see at this point. I was thinking earlier, I don't want to say anything after 2 games, but like there's a chance that within a couple of months we're like, oh, this kid's already one of the 20 best players alive. Like that's how quickly this kid is that's how quickly this kid is progressing and where he's at. In terms of like his ability to impact winning relative to potential. Remember, with most young guys, it's like you see the numbers, you see the production, you see the highlights, but the winning impact isn't there. And that's the exact opposite of what we're seeing with Victor. Like he's straight up impacting winning at an extremely high level as a rookie in the NBA, which is super uncommon. Devin Vassell, 24 points per game so far and 65% true shooting, 7 for 15 on pull-up jump shots and 6 for 6 at the rim. Pretty damn impressive start of the season for him. He had some big shots down the stretch of this game. Also had a big alley-oop to Zach Collins in OT. The Spurs are in good shape. They're going to be a fun team to watch this year. For the Rockets, I thought it was really interesting that they went to Şengün for the most part down the stretch. He's averaging 20, 11, and 7 on 58% true shooting so far. He kind of fell apart in OT. with some turnovers and bad decisions out of the post. But again, like I blame that more on the schematic setup. Like if you run the same exact action without any wrinkles, a dozen times, a defense is gonna figure it out. Like you can mimic the action, but add wrinkles to make it so that like even if you look at down the stretch when LeBron was attacking Nurkic in pick and roll in the Suns-Lakers game, like it was 3 pick and rolls and 3 layups, but all 3 of them were in different spots on the floor, and all 3 of them had different kind of slashing angles, like one from the left wing, one from the middle, and one from the right wing. Like that just gives a little bit of a difference in the way that the alignment is set up, so that maybe it's a different help defender involved, maybe it's a different angle for the screen or whatever it might be. One of the ones that LeBron hit with AD rescreened on the opposite side to get better separation. Like do something different when you're spamming an action to prevent a defense from getting too locked in on it, right? But the Rockets are a lot of fun, and they're better than they were last year. I'm just confused by the process of it all. Like Jalen Green was completely uninvolved in the offense in the fourth quarter and overtime, and like he was your lottery pick 2 years ago. So what's the purpose here? Like I get running it through Şengün, but like running so much through Van Vliet, like my question is especially if you're going to lose games, you're 0-2, and the Rockets are fun, but they're not going to make the playoffs or anything. This is not a team that's going to win a ton of basketball games. But so like all you're doing is just finding out that Fred Van Vliet can make you a mediocre basketball team, rather than letting Jalen Green get his repetitions that he needs so that you can find out whether or not he can lead you to be a great basketball team. Or, no, he can't. We might have to move him and look to go another direction. The only way you're going to find that out is by giving him those opportunities. And it's kind of a bummer to me that 2 games in, he's basically turned into a spot-up player. And by the way, he had 2 driving layups down the stretch of this game on random possessions where he looked to be aggressive. And it's like, this is the type of top-tier athleticism that he has that makes him such an intriguing prospect to begin with. All right, moving on to Heat Celtics. So the Heat jumped him early. Bam was killing him in the half court. He had a lot of success attacking Kristaps Porzingis. That was the first time that I saw Kristaps look a little tissue paper-y on the defensive end. But it's a tough matchup. Bam is a much better athlete than him and is stronger and has a lower center of gravity. So it's basically just hitting him with that right shoulder and creating separation, hitting that little short jumper over the top, or using his strength to get leverage around him to work along the baseline. He was killing him early. Tyler Herro made a lot of shots in just kind of like the breakdown areas of the game in that first half. He had 2 jumpers in transition. He had another one off of an offensive rebound from Kevin Love. Again, like Tyler Herro is one of those guys, like if he's in a really good drop coverage, a really deep drop coverage where he gets good looks in the mid-range, and when he's attacking closeouts, he can be really devastating because of his ability to shoot. He's also really good with those escape dribbles that I was talking about earlier that I want to see Kevin Huerter use more. But it's a little bit tougher for him when he gets into a really tough half-court situation, static, running pick and roll against an elite defense when they're really loaded up on him. That's where it can get a little tougher for him. ISOs as well. But he can get buckets in the flow of the offense, and there's value there. It just really comes down to, again, with the Heat, they get into this fourth quarter situation, and the Celtics are basically throwing the kitchen sink at Jimmy Butler, and there just wasn't another guy who could really, like at a high level, create shots in the half court against the Celtics when they were really locked in. But the Heat go up 26-13. Tyler and Bam are hot early. They did a good job of getting Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown out of rhythm. They're so good at that. For whatever reason, the Heat just are capable of making Jason and Jaylen just not play well. And I think there's a little bit of a mental thing going on there. We talked about this a lot on this show, but like there are matchups where a specific team is just kind of in the other team's head. I feel like Golden State's a little bit in Sacramento's head, for instance, right? Denver's a little bit in the Lakers' head. And I think the Heat are a little bit in the Celtics' head. But the difference is they just have an absurd amount of talent. And they rid that talent in a big way in that fourth quarter. Derek White was awesome. He had 28 points. He had 14 points in the fourth quarter. Derek White's red hot with his jump shooting so far this season. 7 for 11 on jump shots. 3 for 5 on off-the-dribble jump shots. Blocked Jimmy Butler in transition on dunks twice. One in the first half and then a big one late in the game. It's funny, I went on with the Jenkins and Jones guys last week, and that episode just posted this morning, so you can find that on the Jenkins and Jones feed. It's also on our Hoops Tonight feed. If you look at the just this same channel's feed, if you scroll down, the one that looks like a little bit different thumbnail, that was when I went on with the Jenkins and Jones guys. But we were ranking the first options, second options, third options, and fourth options in the NBA. And we got into a little bit of a debate because we were trying to decide who was the best fourth option in the league, and it's definitely on the Celtics. The question is whether or not it's Derek White or Kristaps Porzingis. And so I on the show was like, I think it's Derek White. And the main reason why is I just have a ton of respect for Derek White and what he could do as a perimeter defender. And he's one of the best guard shot blockers in the league. And so many times over the last couple of years when the Boston Celtics offense has broken down in the playoffs, it's been Derek White who's been able to get them flowing again because of his ability to get dribble penetration and hit little pop shots in the lane and stuff like that. And so I think Derek White is a deeply impactful winner. I think he's one of the top 50 players in the NBA. And in this conversation with Jenkins and Jones guys, I was like, I think it might be Derek White. But then all of them were like, no, it's Porzingis. And then I watched the season opener for the Celtics, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's definitely Porzingis. Like, it's just his ability to protect the rim and space the floor in their offense. It just impacts winning at an incredibly high level. But then I see a game like last night, and I'm like, fuck, Derek White is really good too. And the moral of the story here is like, if I don't know which one of those two guys is better, and it's because both of them are freaking good, that's a really good spot to be in. If we're in like a legitimate argument over who your fourth best player is, and the two options are Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis, you're in damn good shape. And the Celtics are in really good shape. Derek White already has 4 blocks this season. Jaylen Brown got going offensively in the fourth quarter. He had 12 points in the fourth. He had a pull-up transition 3 that was nice. Had a really nice contact left-hand layup on the left side of the rim. And then he hits the dagger on the right side. Again, you're going to see a lot of that this year. Like Tatum was kind of down a little bit this game. Jaylen Brown played better, right? Derek White was scoring a lot more. Drew Holiday not as much, although Drew hit a big pull-up jump shot attacking a closeout in down the stretch of this game. But that's what it's going to be like. When you have 5 guys that are like this, any given night, 2 or 3 of them are going to be in the high 20s, low 30s for points, and then the other guys are going to be in the teens. And it's going to be different every night. And the main thing is like that kind of oscillating rhythm is fine during the regular season, but I usually prefer teams that have a more clear hierarchy because they end up being a little bit more consistent in the postseason. So like, I'm less worried about it for the other 4 guys. I just want to see Jason Tatum like consistently in that, like 28 to 32 points a night thing to just kind of show that they're clearly leaning on one guy that's kind of the tip of the spear. And Jason Tatum got a little uninvolved in the offense late. He did have some big plays. The Celtics were attacking Kyle Lowry a ton on the defensive end late in this game. And Jason Tatum had 2 nice attacks on Kyle Lowry, a crossover right to left, 2-handed dunk down the lane. And then he posted him up on the right block and drew a foul going strong towards the middle. But he was kind of uninvolved in the offense outside of that. And I want to see them lean heavily on Jason Tatum, especially down the stretch of games, because that's what you're going to need from him in the postseason anyway. Jason Tatum has already posted up 11 times this season, including that big late post up against Kyle Lowry that got him to the foul line. He only did so 1.7 times per game last year. So like essentially 3 times as many post ups so far per game from Jason Tatum. I think that's really encouraging because I think that's going to be a big half court shot creation weapon for Tatum when we get to the postseason. On the Heat front, they're still the Heat. They can still defend. They can still get you out of rhythm. Again, Tyler Herro at 28, but his half-court shot creation numbers are still below a point per possession. So, again, it's like Tyler Herro is going to be an innings eater in the regular season. I don't think he has enough firepower to be your number 2. And I've talked about this to death, and I know Heat fans are probably getting sick of it, but eventually they're going to have to get more firepower in here. We'll talk about that more in a second. Bam looks like he's continuing to prove offensively. He's run 14 post-ups so far this year and scored 15 points out of them, including passes. 5 points on 5 ISOs, so that's 20 points on 19 half-court shot creation possessions. That's impressive. They're just still operating at too much of a talent disadvantage. Tyler Herro couldn't generate clean looks in the fourth quarter. He was 1 for 6. Bam was 1 for 5 in the fourth quarter. That's what you expect from limited offensive players. They're going to have stretches in the ebb and flow of the game where they can score, but when things really get tight late and defenses lock in, it's only the truly elite guys that can score. And the Celtics just threw the kitchen sink at Jimmy to get the ball out of his hands on his drives, rotated really well out of that. kept getting these guys stuck in static shot creation situations and they couldn't make plays. And again, like the coaching and the conditioning and the culture and Jimmy Butler can only take you so far against the best teams in the league. This team needs another offensive weapon. The Celtics held the Heat to a 96 offensive rating in the fourth quarter, and that was with Tyler Herro and Kevin Love both hitting basically garbage time threes late in the game. And so at the end of the day, it's still that specific problem that's going to hold them back. So far through 2 games, 110 offensive rating, pretty mediocre, 113 defensive rating, just bad, to be honest. And they've been the worst rebounding team in the league through 2 games. They're getting just 44.5% of available rebounds. So again, I'll never count this team out. I trust their top tier guys too much. But this is part of the reason why I wanted Dame to be in Miami. I just thought it would be really interesting to see them kind of be on the same talent level as Boston and Milwaukee. But instead, both of those teams got better, and the Heat seemingly got worse. And we'll see if they can overcome it at some point during the season. All right, moving on to Oklahoma City and Cleveland. 2 more games. So OKC controlled this game for the most part. They had a double-digit lead for most of the second quarter and the beginning of the third. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was torching them. But then Cleveland fought their way back into the game, late third, early fourth, with some really impressive perimeter defense, something we don't expect from this team. This has been a weak perimeter defense team that is excellent in rotation and excellent at the basket protecting the paint, right? And it's a lot of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland just kind of floating around defensively, not giving up a lot of dribble penetration, but them just having the back-end talent to kind of clean it up, right? And what I really appreciated down the stretch of this game is it was their perimeter defense that got them back into it. And why that's exciting is like when you pair elite perimeter defense with elite rim protection, that's when you reach like a true level of defensive potential that can carry you to a championship in the big picture, right? And it comes down to a couple different things because like Caris LeVert has always been a very good perimeter defender, and he gave Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all sorts of problems in the second half of this game as he kind of I would say Caris LeVert deserves the majority of the credit for slowing down the Thunder offense in the second half of this game. But Donovan Mitchell legitimately through 2 games is playing his ass off on defense. Like he's trying harder on the defensive end than I've ever seen him try. And then Max Strus is just a solid perimeter defender who is also a smart team defender in rotation. Dean Wade was very good defensively down the stretch of this game, containing the ball against Jalen Williams, helping and recovering off the ball. They just, as a unit, contained the basketball really well. And especially with cutting off the head of the snake the way that Caris LeVert did on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the most part, they prevented the Thunder from getting those easy driving kick opportunities. Remember, the Thunder are a team that is a ton of aggregate ball handling and shooting. Everybody in that lineup can shoot. Everybody can dribble. And so, like, if you let them play driving kick basketball and beat you off the dribble and get the defense into rotation, they're going to pick you apart. But if you can contain them, you know, a lot of those guys like Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams at this phase in his career as a young player, Chet Holmgren at this phase in his career as a young player, Lou Dort is a guy who's better attacking closeouts than a set defense. They're not going to beat dudes off the dribble a ton. They need to get that initial advantage, right? And the Cavs just basically took that away and shut them down for an extended stretch there in the fourth quarter as they built a 10-point lead. On the other end of the floor, Donovan Mitchell had a really impressive stretch. He had a driving and one over Lou Dort in transition. He hit Dean Wade on a back cut. One of the better passes I've seen Donovan Mitchell make coming along the right wing. He sees Dean Wade and kind of loops the ball out to the side and just hits him in stride to throw down a dunk on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He hit a couple of pull-up jumpers too. Cavs are up 100-90. But then the Thunder finally start getting Cleveland into rotation. First play, Caris LeVert gambles for a steal on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the left corner. Shai kind of like taps it to himself over the top, catches it, gets downhill to the rim, draws a crowd, throws a kick-out pass to Lou Dort at the top of the key. Wide open 3, knocks it down. It's 100-93. Cavs go get a bucket on the other end. It's 112-93. Dort runs down in transition along the right side and runs a ghost screen with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, again, they were containing the ball. If you think of the key like this, or the three-point line like this, they were containing the driving lanes towards the basket, but Lou Dort did something that I thought was really smart. He just went really fast towards the short corner. And on the play, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander sets a screen for him. Both defenders run with Dort, just pitches it back to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a wide-open 3. Those ghost screens are really hard to guard because most often they're going to switch, and it's just really hard for a guy who's running full speed to hand off to someone else who's standing still, but he's standing still and has to guard the player who's running full speed. And so inevitably, it's almost like gravity. It just kind of pulls both guys in that direction. That's why ghost screens work so well. And so he pitches it back to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, wide open three, and he knocks it down, 102-96. Very next possession, they come down, they run a kind of a version of Spain pick and roll where Jalen Williams runs a ball screen with Chet, right? But as Chet is rolling, again in Spain pick and roll, sometimes the shooter will back screen for the roll man so he can go to the basket for a dunk. Sometimes the roll man will down screen for the shooter coming up. In this play, Chet sets the ball screen on Jalen Williams, turns and on his roll to the basket, sets a pin down for Isaiah Joe. Isaiah Joe curls the pin down because he's a shooter. Defenders in trail position, he gets downhill. It's a pitch back to a wide open Jalen Williams at the top of the key. He knocks down a three. Now it's 102-99. Then Lou Dort takes over as one of the best. I missed one. So then on the very next possession, Max Strus cuts down the lane and throws a wild layup up and falls into camera row. And like I always say, when you miss layups and you try to draw fouls, it's kind of a poor strategy for your transition defense, because if you're probably not going to get the call because refs are trying to limit the flopping and all that stuff anyway. And the risk reward factor is kind of shitty, because if you don't get the call, it's going to be a fast break the other way because you're going to lose floor balance because you have a defender laying on the ground in camera row. So Strus is laying on the ground. Thunder run the other way 5-on-4. In the transition defense, remember, you always go to the basket first and then you flare out to shooters. Chet Holmgren ends up trailing the play wide open and he knocks down the three. Now it's 102-102 and we're tied. And again, like what's crazy about that sequence is that's back-to-back threes for the Thunder, but all four of them were from different players off of different action. And what's interesting about that is it wasn't just one guy got hot. This is just the level of skill that this team has, and they're capable when they run action well and they can get the defense into rotation. They're capable of generating high-quality shots for guys that are going to make it. Like in that lineup, it's Isaiah Joe. He's going to make shots. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's going to make shots. Jalen Williams, if you leave him open, he's going to make shots. Chet Holmgren is shooting 71% from three so far at this season. Like these guys are going to make shots, and they have the ability to generate them as long as they can get the defense into rotation. So it's 102-102, and then Lou Dort takes over the game as one of the best perimeter defenders in the world. This is something I've said that made me so excited about this Thunder team. The idea of pairing Lou Dort, who I believe is a top-tier perimeter defender, and Chet Holmgren, who had 7 blocks in the game yesterday. When you combine those two pieces, specifically Lou Dort and his ability to navigate screens, Lou Dort is damn near impossible to screen. When you combine that with real rim protection, you can cause real problems for the best offenses in the league. And so Lou Dort takes the game over with back-to-back defensive possessions on Donovan Mitchell. First one's in pick and roll. On the ball screen, Lou Dort just refuses to be screened. And this is Donovan Mitchell, one of the best athletes in the league. He's trying to get downhill. Lou Dort cuts him off, gets over the top of the screen, and beats him downhill. So as a result, Jalen Williams and everyone's able to stay home on their shooters. Donovan Mitchell finds himself in trouble because he's going downhill and pick and roll. He doesn't have a shot and he doesn't have a pass. So he ends up just jumping and just throwing the ball away. Turns it over. They go down the other end, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Isaiah Joe run a ghost screen, a pick and pop action. And on the action, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander draws 2, pitches it back to Isaiah Joe. Isaiah Joe skips it over to the left wing to Lou Dort. Dean Wade's kind of caught in no man's land between the shooter in the corner and Lou Dort. I think it was Jalen Williams in the corner. He's kind of splitting the difference. Max Strus, it kind of doesn't understand whether or not Dean Wade's going to the corner or to the wing. Lou Dort sees the opportunity. He drives the closeout, gets inside, makes a layup to put him up 114-112. And then the next possession, Donovan Mitchell says, screw it, I'm not going to take a ball screen. I'm just going to try to shoot over to Lou Dort. And Lou Dort's one of the best individual defenders in the world. He slides his feet and forces Donovan Mitchell into an air ball, and Oklahoma City wins the game. So again, super high-level offensive talent on display, an incredible perimeter defense on display from OKC as they come back to win the game. And again, you're adding real rim protection with Chet Holmgren. He had a huge block late in the game on Evan Mobley when it was 102-96 that directly led to the Jalen Williams 3 to get it back to 3. And you've got this outstanding perimeter defender that can't be screened, and you're seeing the elite defensive potential. The Thunder have a 102.5 defensive rating so far through 2 games, which is outstanding. Chet Holmgren averaging 3.5 blocks per game and shooting 71% from 3. I said before I said when he came into the league that I viewed him as essentially like the ideal modern center, the guy who could legitimately be your defensive anchor while simultaneously giving you true 5-out spacing and opening up driving lanes, and he's doing that. And in the big picture, he's going to be an excellent wing scorer as well. He's not showing too much of it. He's done some of it, but I think his first NBA basket was like a half spin back fadeaway over his left shoulder. Like, he's got really high level wing scoring potential as well in the big picture. And that might be something they lean more on in the big picture when he gets older. I can't possibly conceptualize a better fit with this OKC core than Chet. On the Cavs front, it's tough to take too much away from these 2 games because both of them have been so freaking wild. Like, the Nets game, they were down big and had no business winning, and then they stole it. And then in this game, they were up big, and then they blew it. So hard to make heads or tails out of that. The perimeter defense, though, is exciting. Again, like, LeVert's always been pretty good there. But if Donovan Mitchell has his best perimeter defense season as a pro, and you add Max Strus into that equation, he didn't shoot well today, but he still was a positive and made a lot of winning plays. And then if Dean Wade is going to be able to play like that, especially with his length, like, you can have some exciting defensive potential with this team as well. And when you combine that with the return of Jared Allen with real rim protection right next to Evan Mobley, that they could be even more imposing defensively than they were last year. My biggest gripe right now with the Cavs is offensively they're a little too reliant on Donovan Mitchell. And when he's not hitting shots, they're struggling to score right now. And like, that's kind of what these games have looked like. It's like Donovan hits a couple shots in a row, makes a couple plays in a row, and the Cavs go on a big run. And then he goes ice cold and misses a couple in a row or throws a couple bad passes in a row, and then they immediately start to hemorrhage the lead. All right, let's hit our last game and then get out of here for the day. And we're going to hit our mailbag questions, and then we'll get out of here. So the Nets and the Mavs. So the Nets lose another heartbreaker. If you guys remember, they were up 6 late against the Cavs, and they blew that one. This one, they were up 5 late, and they blew this one. Cam Thomas and Royce O'Neal go crazy in the fourth quarter, but then Luka hits back-to-back-to-back-to-back threes to steal the game. The last one's literally a prayer where they get him to give up the ball twice, but he just throws up this like right-handed push shot from 27 feet on the right wing that banks in. And then Cam Thomas, once again, gets a decent look at the end of the game, but can't make it. And the Mavericks are now 2-0. Down big late, though, offense wasn't the issue. The Mavs scored 37 points in the fourth quarter. As good as Luka was down the stretch, Kyrie was every bit as good to start the fourth quarter. The Mavs scored 20 points in the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, with Kyrie basically creating every basket. He's got great pick and roll chemistry with Dwight Powell. Already hit him for a couple of layups. Powell also hit a 3 in the corner off of a driving kick from Kyrie to cap that run off. But again, like that's the crazy thing with this team is like your reward for surviving the Luka minutes is here comes Kyrie and he's going to be almost every bit as impactful. And then if you survive those minutes, here comes Luka again, right? And like so far through 2 games, they've been impossible to guard in every configuration. 121 offensive rating so far for the season. 121 offensive rating with Kyrie on the floor and Luka off. 125 offensive rating with Luka on and Kyrie off. And with both on the floor, a 118 offensive rating. So there's no point in the game where they're going to experience offensive lulls. Now, the question is, are they going to be able to get enough stops, right? And on the defensive end, it was mostly just sloppiness. Like they straight up lost Royce O'Neal way too many times in that fourth quarter. On the first one was strong side help from Grant Williams. Like literally, I think it was I can't remember who it was that was driving downhill. I think it was Spencer Dinwiddie. But like they just left Royce O'Neal in the strong side corner, which you don't want to do, right? You want to force the defense to make a skip pass across the court if they're going to give up an open 3, right? That gets him going. The second one, in transition, they just don't guard him. Like Tim Hardaway Jr., I believe, was supposed to be guarding him, but he's like facing completely away from him elsewhere on the floor, and Royce O'Neal's just standing by himself on the right wing. They pitch it ahead to him. He knocks down the 3. And then on the last one, Josh Green, like you got to think of it like this. Nail help is an important part of NBA defense, but it's all relative to what your situation is, right? Royce O'Neal had just made 2 threes. And Josh Green was like sinking way down to the nail in help. And so when they threw that swing pass to Royce O'Neal, Josh Green had to close out hard. And so Royce just threw a pump fake at him and ended up sidestepping into another 3, right? Like Cam Thomas made some tough shots. And your defense is going to have to withstand tough shots, right? Like I talked about earlier in the show, all these teams have offensive ratings over 100. Like no one's just not scoring the basketball. It's not like you can literally shut a team down. Guys are going to score, but you have to find ways to close down other opportunities. You can't give them the easy ones that come over the course of the game. If Cam Thomas makes the tough shots, but you don't leave Royce O'Neal open, then you don't need Luka to make a prayer at the end of the game to win the game, right? So like those are the areas that they've got to improve. Now, a positive sign, they've rebounded pretty well. Remember, that was a huge problem for the team down the stretch last year. They've grabbed 49% of available rebounds through 2 games. That's pretty good. And again, they're 2-0. I know the Nets and Spurs aren't playoff teams in the purest concept of that, right? But wins are not easy to come by in the NBA. And so, like, in my opinion, you can't hope to be in a better position than where they're at right now. And again, like, I do think that defensively they have the personnel to be better than they actually are. And a lot of it is just little tiny execution things that they can improve over time. And the offensive shot creation piece is legitimately a weapon. Like, I mean, we've talked a lot about the Suns potentially being the best offense in the league, and they very well may end up being so. But like, Dallas has every bit as much potential to be the best offense in the league. That's just when you've got that type of top tier shot creation relentlessly coming at you all game with good spacing concepts and with players at the end of those plays that can finish those plays, you're going to score a lot of points. On the Nets front, Cam Thomas follows up his 36-point night against the Cavs with another 30 in this game. He had 12 in the fourth quarter and hit a game-tying jump shot, like a really nice step-back jump shot through his legs against Josh Green on the right wing to tie the game with about a minute left. Cam Thomas is now 9 for 19 on pull-up jump shots this season, 4 for 6 on floaters. His shot making is real. We've just seen too many examples of it so far through the last 2 years. And again, the biggest indicator is that his teammates trust him at the end of these games. This is back-to-back games now that down the stretch, whether it's Spencer Dinwiddie or Mikal Bridges, they're looking at Cam Thomas and being like, you do it. And I think that's a huge indicator of where he's at right now as an offensive shot creator. The Nets just have to figure out how to get stops in crunch time. They've had big leads down the stretch in both of these games, but they have a 123 defensive rating in the clutch so far this year. So you've played well enough to be 2-0, and instead you're 0-2. And that's the primary reason, and that's what they're going to have to clean up. All right, let's get on to the mailbag. So, first mailbag question. Is there one singular skill possessed by a player that you think is better than the rest? Maybe like Steph's three-point shooting, Giannis's rim pressure, or Jokic's court vision. I think it's easily Steph's shooting. He was the only player in the league last year to hit over 60% in effective field goal percentage on pull-up jump shots, and he was the only other guy in the league to attempt at least 11 threes per game last year. So there's 2 in the entire league, Steph and Damian Lillard, and Dame shot 5% worse than him. So like, it's Steph, and then it's a huge gap, and then it's everyone else. I think his shooting is the best individual skill relative to the field in the league. Next mailbag question. I'm a 28-year-old and casual hooper. Unfortunately, my squad continues to separate across the country as work, spouses, and life happens. Pulling up to LA Fitness / elsewhere for runs with randoms is a nightmare. Old heads who can't run, cherry picking, ISO step back threes, etc. How do you suggest building a new squad to keep love for the game going? So I put this mailbag question in here because I felt this one. I know exactly what you mean. Pickup hoop sucks. It just does. It's always going to be an inconsistent experience, even when you play in areas that are talented, because talent doesn't necessarily equate to guys who know how to play the game. And so here's what I would do if I were you. Because, like, I know when I go play pickup basketball, because I live in Tucson. Tucson's a big town. Like, we have over 1 million people here. It's like 1.2 in the metro area or something like that. But Tucson's not a big basketball town. Like, there's players like me that take the game very seriously. They're few and far between in this city. Whereas, like, when I lived in Charlotte, for every guy like me, there was 25 others that took the game super seriously, and then another 50 that were at a level just below that. There's just a ton of players that give a shit about basketball, that live and breathe that shit when you live in Charlotte. And that's just not what it was here in Tucson, right? Now, as far as confronting the quality of play, just embrace the fact that when you go play pickup, it's going to be a crapshoot. Some days you'll go and it'll be great. And some days you'll go and it'll be a shit show, right? But that's just, it is what it is at this point, right? Find a good men's league and find 7 or 8 guys that you know how to play with and play with those same guys every single time you play in your men's league. You'll build chemistry with those guys, and that'll become the part that you look forward to. Like I have a men's league here in town, a men's league team that I play with, and it's all guys who used to play in college, and they all take it very seriously. We have a ton of continuity. We've won the league 3 of the last 4 times. And so regardless of how shitty my pickup basketball experience can be on a day-to-day basis, I know I can go up there on Sunday and have fun playing with guys who know how to play. And then the other thing I'd say is coach. Get into coaching. Coaching is a great way to recapture some of the joy from competent basketball when you were younger within the concept of something that you can actually do at an older age. Because in general, older age basketball is going to be messy, right? Because we all have stuff going on. We're all busy. We all have other responsibilities. It's tough to get the same groups to the gym every single day. It's just difficult to coordinate, right? But when you're coaching a high school basketball team, the same kids are going to be there every day. And you can kind of scratch that competitive itch through the coaching side of things that you do through the playing side of things. All right, last mailbag question. For whom would you trade D'Lo and Rui? I love Luka, but that's unlikely. It sounds like you're describing Zach LaVine, but I'd rather have Trae Young because he'd set up AD better, and they'd still have the length to make up for his size and defensive shortcomings. So I hate all of those options. Not a huge fan of Zach LaVine. Luka obviously is impossible. Trae Young is a long shot, but I don't think he really fixes many of the Lakers' problems. My favorite deal that involves Rui and D'Lo is you wait till January 15th, you call up the Chicago Bulls, and you offer Rui and D'Lo, and I don't know, maybe you can get it done for a second-round pick. Maybe you have to throw in a first, but you get DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso. Salaries almost match up. You might have to throw in one other smaller contract to make it work. But you bring back DeMar DeRozan, who helps with your half-court shot creation. He's a great passer and a good over-the-top shot maker, something the Lakers struggle with, right? And then Alex Caruso gives you that like dominant a perimeter defender. And because of Alex Caruso playing bigger than he actually is, and his ability to defend on the perimeter, navigate screens, we literally just saw last night Alex Caruso flat out steal a game with defensive playmaking and a huge corner 3, as the Bulls came back from down big to win a game. So I kind of envision a scenario there where now you have Caruso, Reeves, DeRozan with LeBron and AD, and just a ton of offensive skill. Good perimeter defense. The only thing that would concern me there a little bit is like the wing rebounding thing, but Alex Caruso is really good at that, and LeBron and AD can make up for a lot of that. And then you still have your forwards coming off the bench, and you kind of can configure it in different ways. So that would be my dream D'Lo Rui trade, would be for Alex Caruso and Zach LaVine. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you for supporting the show, and I will see you guys on Monday.